Fellow South Africans, good afternoon. The Premier of Gauteng, Mr. David Makura, the MECs in absentia, but they will be joining us during the course of this session. Respective captains of industries, CEOs, government officials, and the most important people, all businesses, including those people who are joining us on live stream. I greet you all and all protocol observed. We have gathered here today, led by our Premier, to continue on deliberations and discussions that were started by our President on Sunday when he addressed the nation on the pandemic that we are facing. Subsequent to that, the Premier led a delegation from the provincial executive, communicating a message that says we shall not lose hope in the midst of this crisis that we have found ourselves in. We must look at opportunities that we can create for ourselves. Informed by that engagement, the Premier has considered to engage with the respective stakeholders within our economy. He started this morning with engaging with the leaders of the religious formations, and we have now gathered here to engage with business and captains of industries. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been called upon, or we are being called upon, to engage and provide appropriate solutions that will ensure that our economy doesn't collapse. This notion is informed by the size of the Gauteng economy, the burden that we carry on our shoulders, not only for the country, but for the region at large. At this point, I would like to request our Premier to come and address us on what we intend to achieve from today as well as going forth. Premier.
Thank you very much to our head of department, Ms. Pumla Mapai. Greetings to the distinguished business leaders who have been able to join us today. Let me start by apologizing that the MEC for Finance and the MEC for Health will join us in a few minutes. I left them at a meeting with religious leaders, which started at 10 o'clock this morning, so I had to do my part. They were concluding. You would understand that like business, that's a sector that's not easy to deal with the situation we are facing now for churches and synagogues and mosques and temples to reduce the number of people who come in as part of implementing those measures. It's very, very difficult. But we had a very good meeting with them this morning. The second thing I would like to say is that I have met yesterday with the leaders of political parties, all political parties represented in the Gauteng legislature, the ANC, the DA, the EFF, the Freedom Front Plus, the ACDP, the IFP, attended the meeting that I convened yesterday morning. They are in full support of all the measures that our province has put in place in order to implement the announcement made by the President when he declared the national disaster on Sunday. So obviously, we have been pretty concerned about the impact of all this COVID-19 on the economy. And we are seeing it's already having an impact in various parts of the world. Dr. Masuku will later take you through just all the interventions we are making to reduce the spread or curb the spread. He is the leader of the team of the Provincial Executive Council that's dealing with comprehensive measures. But I also set up another team of MECs, 3 MECs, that's looking at the economic side of it. The MEC for Economic Development, the MEC for Finance, and MEC Panyaza Lesufi. You will receive, in a short while after my remarks, you will receive a presentation. We have our team of economists in the province have already been doing work. And this session we have with you as business leaders is very important to help us factor the full picture. They've already been doing work to look at how we are going to be impacted and how we are already impacted from an economic point of view by looking at who we trade with. It is very important for us as the leadership, the leaders of various sectors in Gauteng province to understand why Gauteng is going to be uniquely impacted and quite more severely impacted. We are vulnerable. And there are several reasons, at least 5 reasons why our province will be vulnerable. So when you look at all the numbers that are coming out, the more infections happen. They've just announced 202 today, from 150 yesterday. Expect that there will always be larger numbers from Gauteng. And there is a simple reason, an objective reason. The first one is that we are a port of entry from a point of view of air travel. So OR Tambo International Airport, as you know, is the biggest airport in our country, but also OR Tambo is an aviation hub of sub-Saharan Africa. There are many people who fly to different parts of the SADC region through OR Tambo. So when air travel has been identified as one of the critical factors for the transmission of this virus. A lot of the cases we have had in our own country, a lot of them are people who have traveled, and it's principally air travel, but we now have cases, yes, of local transmission. The second reason, other than being an aviation hub for sub-Saharan Africa, we also have the large concentration of foreign diplomatic missions in our country. In fact, this is often something South Africans don't appreciate, that outside New York, and possibly one, outside New York and another Washington, we have the largest concentration of foreign missions and diplomats in our country. And where are they located? In Tshwane, in Pretoria. So you know the nature of that, their work is, they're moving in and out. It's the nature of their work. And so that's an important factor, because the transmission of, if you discount what is now happening, local transmission. The third reason is that we are an economic hub of South Africa. and go just beyond that. We are an economic hub, an industrial hub of sub-Saharan Africa. So goods and people, movement of goods and people in and out of, and through Gauteng. Sometimes goods that come from other areas arriving at our ports, Durban, into sub-Saharan Africa. All that comes through Gauteng, into the other centers, right up to Zambia, the DRC. So we are very integrally connected with the and the economics of the various SADC countries. Those economies very much are dependent and networked to the Gauteng economy. In addition to the fact that we are an economic hub of South Africa, that there are more people who move in and out of our province into the other parts of the country, where we also pose a danger that if we don't contain, if we don't escalate the measures and contain the spread here, in addition to the things I've said, is that we can become a source of spreading this virus to the other parts of the country. And when Easter is coming, like it is coming now, you know what happens during Easter. A lot of people move out of Gauteng to the different parts of the country. The numbers are low now in those regions such as Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Free State, Northern Cape, Northwest. But if we don't do extraordinary things here in Gauteng, so the national government also understands that if you want to contain the urban hubs like Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and Western Cape, those urban hubs are critical. That we have to, that's where there's another factor, there's large concentration of people. Gauteng province, as you know, has 15.2 million people. 1 out of every 4 South Africans you meet is likely to be coming from Gauteng. So we are a high densely populated province. 25% of South Africa's population is located here. And given all the other earlier factors I have indicated, we are an aviation hub, we are an economic hub. If you add that to population density and go to the next factor, which is human settlements. Some of the human settlements and the public transport systems move millions of people. Our public transport system moves millions of people on a daily basis. And we know that the research points to the fact that the public transport system is also a very important area where if we have an outbreak of an epidemic, that's where you're going to have a lot of infections happening. So densely populated, especially the informal settlements, in the townships. So once this pandemic now, because it has been declared, it has moved from just being an epidemic to a global pandemic. Once it moves into these densely populated areas like the townships and the informal settlements, the numbers will shoot. And we also know that it is in those areas also where these issues around hygiene measures, washing your hands every day, in some of the areas there may not be adequate water. Some of these measures that are being introduced, applying them, social distancing, just social distancing in those areas would be very, very difficult. We also have organizations, civil society organizations like churches that are big themselves. They are big gathering places because we are a densely populated province. So that's why the meeting we were having with the churches now, that to get them to understand 100, even though the science of 100 is shifting, in many parts of the world, they are reducing those numbers lower and lower and lower. They may have started with 1,000 in some parts of the world. They are reducing them lower and lower as the pandemic gains momentum, our country may be headed in that direction, where even as we are now, we are less than 100, it may be, we may go for a situation where even that is no longer allowed. But that's a function of national decisions, because we are led by our president. Everything we are doing, we are led by our president to say, now this is the step where we are, these are the measures, and then monitoring every day what's going to happen. So, and when we talk about the economic impact, so because we are an economic hub, so the economic impact will be felt severely and immediately here, because the Gauteng economy is also very globally connected. We are a highly globally connected economy. Something that happens in any part of the world, at the scale it is. Already we were feeling China. When China did the lockdown, we were already feeling China. What's happening with Europe, the epicenter now of this pandemic has shifted to Europe. You know, our trading, in terms of our trading partners, major trading partners, the trade volumes between us and some of the major European economies, what happens there has an immediate impact on us. From a global trade point of view, but also and then the impact on small businesses. Some of the measures we have put in place may become quite a big challenge. And obviously we called you here very conscious that we are just a provincial government. I don't want to raise an expectation that a provincial government can deal with issues that are belonging to the national sphere. For example, yesterday already, the Reserve Bank has dealt with an important issue about cutting the interest rates. So there's no provincial government that can cut interest rates. There's no municipality that can cut interest rates. It's only the Reserve Bank. So there are a lot of other national issues, whether it's on the economy or on the measures that were announced by various ministers. A lot of them have to be dealt with at a national level. But we know that the full impact will be felt at a lower level in our provinces, in our cities, in our residential areas. That's where the jobs are. That's where people, the businesses are. And especially small business will be very, very hardest hit. And we know that the global trend and the South African trend as well is that the big companies in the last few years, the big companies, yes, may retain jobs, but they are no longer the key driver of employment. It's the SMME sector where new jobs in a significant scale. So the major employers, yes, they have the numbers, they may help us retain those. But if you really want to drive significant economic development in our country, is the SMME sector. But the SMME sector would be immediately hit in a very big way by this situation. So we called you today to also start a conversation that will enable me. I preside over what is called the Provincial Command Council. So the president leads the National Command Council. Every province and premiers in those provinces lead the Provincial Command Council. And they must engage various sectors. That's why today we were meeting with the religious sector to also understand their problems. They raised a whole list of issues with me, but when we concluded the meeting, they were saying to me, Premier, all being said and done, we must be part of the efforts to save lives and reduce the impact of this pandemic. And we don't want to be sides of transmission, sides of infection, and simply insist that no, our churches are big. So they were very, very helpful, but they raised other things that we will raise we will be able to take to the president about. And many of the churches said to us, because you will hear when Dr. Masuku speaks on the health implications, that we may reach a point where there are more people who are infected and then who need to be treated. It's one thing to be infected, that 80% of those who are infected, it's mild, who are in the stage of mild. But when you get to severe, that 15 to 20% where now people are severe, they've gone beyond that, the fact that they've got the virus, they need to be treated. Depending on the pace, and we are looking at what's happening in Italy and in Spain versus what happened in China, in Singapore, in Japan, we are looking at, we may reach a point where we need more facilities than we have at the moment, and where people may need to be quarantined who are infected, where people may need to be treated who are at that stage where they must be treated. And we just hope, because you are business people, I can't say and pray, but I added this, and pray that the situation doesn't get there, because think of what the impact would be. If it gets to a point of shutting down, a total lockdown, from a business point of view, is that it is jobs and it is businesses. So the one thing that everything needs to be done to ensure that we get to taper down the infections, what's called flattening the curve, to avoid getting to a point where you kind of at a point where you have no other alternative. How you get to that point and how you avoid that, there are many calculations that have to be made. And I'm hoping that also business organizations at a national level have an opportunity through the business working group to interact with the president. But today I thought, let me and my team of MECs charged with this responsibility just interact with business to hear the voice of business. Part of hearing the voice of business is, where can you help? What are the available capabilities? We want supply chains to continue to be in place. We don't run short of supplies, the essential supplies, including, this thing that worried us a lot about the stockpiling of food, people rushing to go and buy. The other thing that worried us a lot about just the price increases. There are a lot of citizens who have been sending me messages who were showing me that what a bottle, maybe 20 mils of a sanitizer bottle was costing just a week ago, and what it costs now. From one of the citizens sent me, she used to be a member of our legislature from the Democratic Alliance, sent me what used to cost in a locality 120 milliliters of sanitizer used to cost 174 rands. So she showed me that it's now 314 rands. From 100 and she just said a week ago this was 174 rands. Now it is 314 rands. The Minister of Trade and Industry yesterday was also talking about the engagements that national government, that's the right level, has had with businesses, including retailers, just on this issue of price, because we know that when there is a crisis, even of this magnitude, for some it may just be a business opportunity. You are business people. Somebody may just see that, things are running, everybody needs this thing. But when we face a crisis of this magnitude, and this is just an emergency and a disaster, we need to make sure we move together as various sectors. So what I am interested not only in sharing with you what our team, the MECs and our research team of economists says, but after that I want to hear from you. I'm told some of you arrived here at 12:30. You were here early, and I really appreciate that. You even had to break for lunch. You've been waiting for us. We really appreciate that. We don't take this for granted. But in the end, when we leave here, we want to also hear from you as business leaders to be able to say, how do we brace this together? How do we face this situation together? And what are some of the things we need to think about? Because you can't think about all these measures if you also don't engage all the sectors. So I really appreciate your presence here this afternoon. It's a Friday. Normally in business, you are not in meetings on Friday afternoon. You are doing some work on Friday afternoon, but the last thing you are doing on Friday afternoon is a meeting. Am I correct? Yeah. You rather change your day to be doing something. And business, this is also shifting, impacting on how our business is going to operate. So putting in place those measures, how many can you afford as a small business to have people who are working from home? What will that require? The big corporates, I think they are very well positioned. They know, they have organized their work, they do remote. But small businesses, and sometimes with small businesses, how do you minimize social interaction? And sometimes with small businesses, that just social interaction is one of the core things you've got to do because of the nature of the work, the nature of your business. So this session we have will help us just to also understand that as government. I want to tell you, as the Premier of Gauteng, I can't promise you bailout. That will just be populist, people who go around. I have no money to bail you out. But I can do a lot with you, including amplifying your voice about the impact of this. But I also want those of you who say we have something to offer. We need national government to look at that, but we also can work with you, Premier. Some of the businesses have been phoning me. I won't say the names. They are saying to me, Premier, we have this, we have that. We can help here. Normally, if you need facilities, we would normally charge this, but we know these are tough times. Or we are going beyond our call of duty.